Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is July 4th. Happy 4th of July to everybody out there. We're going to back up the infrared satellite imagery to yesterday morning here and put it into motion. And if you notice, these grays emerge across the desert southwest and come across eastern Oregon, eastern Washington, Willamette Valley. If you look really close, you can see a little bit of that activity up across the Puget Sound. That is the landmass heating with the afternoon sun. And then we go into the evening and overnight hours, and you can see that very warm landmass retreat back to like Death Valley, for example. Doesn't cool much overnight. And then we go back to this morning here, and you can see we're starting that cycle again as we're going to start to warm things up here across the Pacific Northwest even further. And if I scroll back and forth here, you'll notice this clockwise rotation here off the coast with that low pressure system out over the Gulf of Alaska. And this is the ridge of high pressure. It's going to be dominating our weather on in towards next week. And we're going to dive into these details starting now. This is Seattle National Weather Service here, and you can see there are heat advisories across a lot of western Washington, except for some of the coastal areas of Oregon and Washington, but there are excessive heat warnings all over the place as well. It does include Wenatchee, Moses Lake, Spokane, and Portland here, but the heat advisory is for Seattle towards Bellingham. And there's going to be some elevated dew points here across southwest BC and northwest Washington. It's going to make things feel a little bit muggy there. So although the temperatures are not going to be too extreme for Bellingham, for example, you're talking about some mid and upper 80s, that those dew points are going to be pretty high here. So it's going to keep that relative temperature pretty warm also. And I should note that those are pretty warm temperatures there for Bellingham, Washington. Also, you can see Seattle, we're probably looking at maybe 2 or 3 days of 90 or plus. You can see Shelton at 97. Look at North Bend, 99 here. Centralia could hit 100 degrees. Bremerton coming in at 96 there for Sunday, probably the warmest day on Sunday there. You can see that we are going to be dealing with this very warm temperatures here. The Spokane National Weather Service talking about increasing fire danger here. Very hot there. Moses Lake perhaps topping out at 107 along with Lewiston there on Tuesday. Maybe the warmest day out there. Might be some nice dust devil days out there. Richville, Washington as we go. Looks like maybe Monday and Tuesday might be some light winds, even Sunday there, and probably today as well. As if you're a big dust devil chaser out there, head out towards Richville over the next few days, and you might get some big monsters rolling around out there. But you can see these temperatures are pretty downright warm. Look at Wenatchee, you're talking about 100 degrees Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on in through next week. Now, this is something interesting here. Medford National Weather Service. Look at the all-time record high for July here. For example, for Roseburg, 109, 70% chance of reaching the all-time record high for July here, set back in 1946 here. And you can see Mount Shasta City, also 71%. You get down into California as well. You can see the all-time record high also. And this is the all-time. This includes July and every other month, August and June as well. And we do have chances to reach these all-time record highs across some of these areas. Even Medford, Oregon could get its all-time record high here, set back in the heat dome there. We have a 50% chance to hit that record here on Saturday. So interesting stuff here. Nice graphic here from the National Weather Service. Medford, Oregon put out yesterday morning. This is the thunderstorm outlook. I just want to point this out, mainly east of Missoula now, across some of the Rockies of BC and Montana and British Columbia here as well. And then we go day 2, and again, a little bit further east than Missoula. They're not expected to include Spokane or Pendleton at this time. Now looking at Seattle, 76 degrees yesterday. Nice day out there, 1 degree above average, but we're going to start to slowly ramp the heat up. We're going to notch it up here as we go through the day today, and then as we go on in through tomorrow and the weekend, we're going to ramp it up even more. Are we going to get to some of these record highs here? Maybe that 90 there in 2010 is under the gun as we go through July 7th coming up here. So we'll be watching that over the next few days as well. No precipitation yet. July typically a pretty dry month here across much of the Pacific Northwest. And if you want a nice affordable home weather station, nice and easy to check the temperature before you leave the house, builds a forecast for your individual location. Haptic rain gauge lets it know when it starts raining at your house, and you've got these parameters you can click on, and it creates graphs for you, stores a lot of data for you in the cloud. And yeah, ultrasonic anemometer, solar powered here. Highly recommended. Click on that link down below if you want to save 10% off. Now, looking at a wider view of things here, this is the ridge we've been talking about that we saw in the infrared satellite imagery. You can see that low out over the Gulf of Alaska, and the polar vortexes and the polar lobes up here, whatever you want to call them, are pretty weak this time of year. There's just not as much cold air as what will be coming when we go into the fall and the winter months. So we put this into motion. You can see that ridge slow moving, reaching all the way up into the Gulf of Alaska here, all the way up towards Kodiak, Alaska. And it kind of hangs on for a while here as well. It's going to be stubborn and hang out across some of the southwest USA and kind of keep heights elevated here across some of the Pacific Northwest. But we do start to flatten it out here a little bit as we go through mid and later portion of next week. How much are we going to cool down? That is a good question here. And we're going to be watching that over the next few days. How long we're going to keep this excessive heat across some of the region. And I like to show this one too. What's going on at about 5,000 feet shows the wind direction here and temperature anomaly above us. And you can see Washington, Oregon here. Put it into motion. You can clearly see the anticyclone here off the coastline here and getting a little bit of offshore flow at times, but just enough to keep things very warm otherwise here across the Pacific Northwest all the way on in through the mid portion of next week. This is as far as the European as last night goes, and it goes out to about Tuesday night. You can see the very warm conditions here across Pacific Northwest, well up into British Columbia and Alberta also. So if we take a look at the GFS, now we're going to search way off, about 2 weeks off into the extended forecast. So you can see Hurricane Beryl down here to the bottom right. If you're interested in that, you can also see the big ridge off our coastline here dominating our weather. And again, that low pressure system there across the Gulf of Alaska. And you can see that ridge nosing all the way up into the Gulf of Alaska there towards Kodiak here by the time we get towards Saturday morning. And again, this is going to hang on as we go through the weekend and the early portion of next week. You see that low churning across the Gulf of Alaska tries to reduce the heights a little bit here. So we could cool down, especially portions west of the Cascades as we go on into the mid portion of next week. Then the ridge tries to rebuild a little bit here. We'll see how that goes. Kind of a cat and mouse game as we go off into the extended forecast, trying to flatten this ridge out with a couple systems through northern British Columbia. We'll see how that ends up working out as we're looking at over 300 hours off into the future here. But again, it is July and these polar vortexes, these polar lobes are very weak at this time of year. So it's why it's summertime here across the northern hemisphere. Now taking a look at Seattle Tacoma International Airport, you can see the European having Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday 90 plus, maybe even Wednesday hitting 90 here, and a little bit of a cool down here as we go through the end of the following week. Again, we'll be updating that as we go, but you can see starting to ramp these temperatures up a little bit here today. Maybe looking at 80 degrees for SeaTac today. Sometimes the European underdoes these a little bit here, and then Friday and Saturday you can see we really start to ramp up the heat there as well before we start to really get going there as we go through the end of the weekend. Now looking at the national weather models, also calls for those 90-degree days Sunday, Monday, Tuesday with very warm days Friday and Saturday also. This is the GFS here, so you can see it does call for 4-5 days 90 plus for Seattle. Might be overdoing it a little bit here, but the overall message here is very warm conditions will be dominating the region. And this is the GFS here as well, and you can see some very warm temperatures. This is the ensemble mean 98 for Sunday. So a little bit of a disagreement between the European wants to keep things in the lower 90s, right around 90, and the GFS keeps pointing at some warmer temperatures there for Sunday. We'll see which model wins out on that. So this is an interesting cross section here of the temperatures. If we go to the top of this graphic, that is 10,000 feet and the surface is down here, and these are the afternoons. This is this afternoon here, the 4th of July. You can see how much warmer it's going to be on the 5th. There's the 6th, there's the 7th on Sunday, the 8th, and the 9th. So we are going to be really much warmer in the upcoming days here than we will be today, and today is going to feel quite nice if you like some heat there. We're going to be again up towards 80 degrees for Seattle most likely, but you can see the heat incoming here and maybe even hanging on a little bit as we go towards the end of the week. We'll see how that goes. This is Eugene, Oregon. Take a look at today versus tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Very warm temperatures incoming here and not much overnight relief for some of these locations. Portland, same thing here. Looks like a blowtorch each and every afternoon. Very warm temperatures are incoming. And this is something interesting, the 6-hour max multi-run temperature trend. So as you can see, when we went back on June 30th, we started to show some 90-degree days possible, and you can see how that's been on the uptrend here as we've been through the last few runs. Almost 1, 2, 3, 4 days showing right up around 90 degrees now for Seattle. Definite upward trend here over the last few days in this heat event. This is Seattle Tacoma as well in the GFS, same graphic shown here, and again you can see maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. It wants to show 3 to 5 days of 90 plus here for SeaTac, and again kind of uptrending that heat a little bit here, but not as much so as what was on the European. So the GFS kind of latched onto this heat a little bit better. It just might be overdoing some of these individual day temperatures. Portland International on the GFS as well. This is the ensemble. I mean, look at these very warm temperatures. You're talking at least 5 days over 90 degrees, perhaps getting up towards 100 on some of those individual days as well. This is Bend Municipal Airport. Again, 100. You're talking about 100-degree days here, prolonged extended heat wave incoming. So Portland, average high for this time of year is right around 80 degrees or so. So we're looking at 15 to perhaps 20 degrees above their normal high for this time of year as we go through the weekend on and through early next week. And again, those warm overnight lows. And also something else Portland is going to be dealing with in a lot of the Willamette Valley here is this high wet bulb globe temperature effect here. Very warm temperatures when you take into account our region and the direct sunlight and things like wind and dew point temperature also. And you can kind of see where these classifications are. I've been showing those the last few days. Class 1, Seattle and Portland. And once you get into the eastern portion, you get Class 2. And of course, places that normally get much higher wet bulb globe temperatures here are a little bit more acclimated to that. So that's Class 3. Now, you can also check that out on Weather Bell if you want to go to the National Plan of Models, and you can scroll through this. This would be for today. And you'll notice as we go on into tomorrow, we really start to ramp that up and we warm things up, especially across the Willamette Valley and some of southwest Washington. And then as we get on in towards Saturday here as well, and then Sunday, probably the warmest day here across the region. You can see some of these wet bulb globe temperatures getting pretty high, even on into southwest BC. So taking a look at Brookings, Oregon, another very warm day here today. Check it out, 95 here for the 4th of July. Then the European wants to drop things back down here, but this really, it needs that offshore flow to get these really warm temperatures here for Brookings, Oregon here. So it looks like that might be backing off here, but maybe bouncing back as we go through the early portion of next week. This is Bend, Oregon, extended heat wave, average high temperature this time of year right there in the mid 80s, and you're talking about exceeding 100 degrees for several days. Bellingham, something similar here as well. And just a reminder here, even though the air is hot, the water is not. So if you're going out to the lakes and rivers out across the region here, you can get that shock when you go in here. And yeah, you can lose your energy pretty quickly there. So heads up, wear your life jacket. And 6 to 10 day, no surprise here as we go through July 13th. Above average signal clearly evident there across the west coast of the lower 48. And 6 to 10 day precipitation. We got this below average signal when we hardly get any precipitation at this time of year anyway. They're just basically saying, hey, nothing is on the way here for the Pacific Northwest. And of course, I'm going to see if this will update. Let's see, it should be updating here shortly, but if not, we kind of get the gist. As you can see, we've got some critical burn environment, especially across portions of south and eastern slopes here of the Cascades for Oregon, and this could bring some elevated risk even into places like Seattle and the Seattle metro area and some of western Washington, Portland, Willamette Valley here also could be under the gun for some elevated fire risk as we go on into early next week. So let's try not to start any fires today. Hopefully everybody is smart with the firework activity here. Let's not do that. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys are having a good 4th of July here. Going to go out there and enjoy some festivities and see what's going on. Hopefully this heat wave starts to back off a little bit as we go through next week, because it can be problematic here across the region if you start to extend this heat wave. But it is July, it is summertime. We're just going to be doing this in the above average style here for at least the next week. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. Click like and subscribe. It costs nothing to subscribe as well. This channel is actually pretty good compared to a lot of other YouTube channels with as far as how many viewers are subscribed, but still it costs nothing to subscribe, and it really helps get the word out here across Pacific Northwest. Let's get everybody educated on the weather here, and I will talk to you guys again tomorrow, and I'll see you then.